This is the Celestial Fireweaver build for World vs. World roaming, and it is a strong, small scale and dueling build because it has so much survivability, which allows it to win most of its matchups through evasion, barrier, and healing. And then it has a decent amount of kill potential, but the issue with this build is that it will struggle to secure kills on enemies who choose not to fight you. And that can be sort of unrewarding in a lot of situations where enemies will refuse to fight you unless they have the numbers advantage. And while this build can survive and fight outnumbered very well, it will struggle sometimes. So let's just get into the build. I take all Celestial gear with the Rune of Speed. So the idea of Rune of Speed is whenever you have swiftness, you'll move even faster than the normal swiftness speed, and that is because you want to have that kill potential that I talked about having an issue about earlier, where if enemies choose not to fight you, then they just run away and you can't really land any of your damage on them. And because your damage is mostly based on just pulsing area of effect abilities around you, you can make your abilities stronger and more easy to land if you yourself are moving faster, because the area around you also moves faster. Also, when you're in those outnumbered situations, you don't really have too many escape plans as a weaver, and if you get locked down, you can really be, tunneled, and it can be very painful. So the Rune of Speed allows you to stay out of range of a lot of abilities and give you a lot of potential for disengage. On the sword and focus, I take energy cleansing. That's pretty simple there because you want the most survivability you can, and there's a lot of dodge synergy on this build. You'll get barrier and stuff like that whenever you dodge. And the cleansing sigil is because while the build has a decent amount of Condi cleanse on it, you're still going to need a little bit more to be able to survive in situations where you're going against full Condi builds, or when you're outnumbered and you're going to get conditions on you no matter what you do. The traits I take are Fire, Arcane, and Weaver. In Fire, you're just going to have more burning duration and a chance to get some more burns on crits. You do have a decent amount of Fury on this build, so you will get like 50% chance to crit. There is Sunspot whenever you swap into Fire Attunement, which is really important as a Weaver because you can swap into Fire Attunement very often. And then there is Smothering Auras, which will give you a lot of your Condi cleanse on this build. Another thing is that Sunspot will constantly give you those Fire Auras, which allows you to constantly do damage to enemies that hit you. It's sort of like retaliation, but a condition. And essentially when enemies are trading blows with you, you're always getting the better deal out of it because they're burning while also hitting you. And then you're going to also be hitting them with additional attacks. So the Sunspot here is really important. You want to be swapping into Fire Attunement very often to get that cleansing from Smothering Auras and from just getting damage from being Sunspot. Pyromancer's Puissance is pretty important because the might that you gain is going to give you more power and condition damage, and as a hybrid build, you're going to want both of those. And then Flame Expulsion is going to be an attack whenever you leave Fire Attunement that will do a little bit of burning and power damage. And over time, this will add up. So when you're just going in and out of Fire Attunement a lot, you'll be doing these Flame Expulsions, which will either constantly tax the enemy of health or their cooldowns to deal with it. So it's really powerful. Then in Arcane, I have Arcane Restoration, which is just going to heal you whenever you swap attunements. You're going to be swapping a lot of attunements, so it's nice sustain. You're going to gain boons whenever you swap attunements too. The 6 seconds of protection from Celestial is really strong. So if you're going against like a power class, what you can do is go into Earth Attunement and get 6 seconds of protection. And then you can do like a CC ability and you'll get more of that protection from the Elemental Lockdown trait. And then you can swap out of protection and then swap back in, and you can really have a high amount of protection uptime on this build. But you also want to be going into air for the swiftness, and then water can give you some regen. Finally, there is Evasive Arcana. This is a really important trait because you're going to be dodging a lot, and it can give you multiple effects whenever you dodge. So whenever you dodge in fire, you'll do a 2 stack of burn for 9 seconds, which is actually pretty insane damage. So you want to make sure that you're always dodging on top of your enemy, especially while you're in fire, because it will give you an effect. And then the effect in water is going to give you a condition cleanse and 2000 healing, so that's pretty strong. And then in air, it's going to just give a 7-second blind, which is okay. And then in earth, it's going to do a cripple plus a really long bleed, which isn't really too good, but it's also a blast finisher, which is going to be important for a combo that we're going to want to show later on in the skills section. You can take Master's Fortitude, which I prefer, it just gives you more health, or you can take Superior Elements, which will give you a little bit more condition cover and also maybe a little bit more damage because of that. But generally, you're not going to be getting too much value out of this because the build doesn't have enough uptime of that, and this is kind of like a DPS build, not a burst build. Whereas if you were like a Fresh Air or a Lightning Rod Weaver, this would be a really good trait. Then there's Bolstered Elements, which gives barrier every time you activate a stance. So we have Twist of Fate, Primordial Stance, and Tailored Victory or Weave Self. So that's going to give you a decent amount of barrier from those. But also, whenever you go below 50% HP, here's the real reason we take this trait, is you'll gain a Stone Resonance, which will give you a lot of barrier. And while I don't like Stone Resonance because it only has one purpose of making you tankier, and you could take another utility that has a little bit more utility to it, the traded Stone Resonance gives you that barrier usually when you need it, and it's on a 70-second cooldown anyways, so it's like you're getting 1 stack of that Stone Resonance, but kind of when you need it, and that allows you to take another utility instead of Stone Resonance. And it's not like Weaver's Prowess is going to give you much besides just a little bit more damage. Then finally you have Invigorating Strikes, which gives you Vigor whenever you use a dual attack, and you want to be spamming out your dual attack so you'll get a decent amount of Vigor, especially because you have Boon Duration. And whenever you dodge, you will give yourself 1000 barrier, which is also very strong because when you're usually under pressure, you want to dodge, and then after someone attacks you, you'll have that barrier. So it really allows the Weaver build to survive very well. It can be difficult to think about what skills you want to use on Weaver because of how the offhand doesn't have the same attunement as your main hand. But generally what I think of when I'm trying to swap attunements is, do I want protection? Then go into earth. Do I want healing? Then I go into water. Do I want mobility? Then I'll go into air. Do I want anything else? Probably go into fire. So generally you can think of a rotation as fire into other attunement, into fire, into other attunement, into fire, but it gets a little bit more complicated than that. So let's show off like an example rotation here. So maybe I'll start out in air for the mobility. I will jump on a target and then I'll swap into fire, gale them, Pyro Vortex, and then do all that stuff that I want to do. Go into earth, do my vortex for a little bit more damage, and then I'll lava skin. Maybe I'll put down my flame wall here and blast the fire shield, and then I can go back into fire. I can use my fire 2 in the firewall, which will give me another fire aura, and then that'll give me a little bit more cleansing. And then from there I can go into water and I can just do a little bit of stuff there. Now there is one combo that you want to know if you really need healing. So what you'll do is you'll go into water and then you'll wait till the attunement swap. Then you'll probably dodge, use the 2 skill, swap into earth, and then you'll dodge into your water field and then use the earth 2 to blast it once again. And you can do other ways of blasting it like Weave Self or even Comet, but those generally are the ways that you'll use it. And then from there, what you can do is go back into air if you want your swiftness uptime again, and then you just go into fire and maybe do the rotation all over again. And yeah, you just pretty much just go fire attunement, and that's generally going to be good for you because the 2 skill is just a very reliable damaging skill. Here's a outnumbered fight against a Scrapper, a Fresh Air Weaver, and a Ranger. I'm going to be pressured pretty heavily by the Ranger if they free cast on me, so I'm going to pop my Reflect, try to get out of there. I get Galed, I have to Stun Break and go into Obsidian Flesh to get out of there. I'm going to try to counter pressure the Weaver, but I don't have too much damage, and I'm going to pour it out and just going to spam my Earth and Air Attunements just to get the protection and the swiftness to be able to kite out, and just look for a better situation to maybe get a kill or split them up. So I'm in fire now, and I'm going to actually use this tree here to line of sight, which makes the ranger get closer to me, close enough that I can actually pour into melee range, which allows me to counter pressure them a lot more. I land a really good gale into the fire burst into Earth, and that's taxed them of quite a lot of their health. I use the Earth combo here to blast, but I don't have my Earth 2 up, so I don't get as much as I would want there. But I am trying to counter pressure the ranger while the scrapper kind of attacks me. So I'm trying to avoid the scrapper but stay on the ranger, which is hard because the ranger is from range. I use the blink into the Earth 2 there, which allows me to down them, but the scrapper can revive with the function gyro, and it's a ranger, so I have to be very careful. The pyro vortex there is really going to help me to secure the down, but yeah, they're still a ranger, so it's going to be pretty troublesome to be able to get this stomp. I have to dodge the AoE knockback there, and pyro vortex is up again, but I don't really need it, and at this point the scrapper has taken so much pressure from trying to res that they're also going to go down. This is a 1v2 against a Power Herald and a Condition Mirage, which are two of the most scary builds for me to go against as a Fire Weaver. So I'm playing very safe because the conditions are constantly being put on me, and I also have to deal with dodging the Power Herald's burst. So mainly what I'm doing in this situation is playing around the Herald because they're the hardest for me to survive, because I can just run through my rotation and deal with the Mirage by cleansing, but I have to actually actively dodge the Herald, and also the Herald is probably the easier one to kill. So I'm mostly just focusing on the Herald here. I have to use my last stun break, which is very dangerous, and my Earth 2 is on cooldown, so I tank an entire sword 4. Now I have to Polaric Leap to interrupt the Rev when they jump on me like that, and I'm just trying to kite as hard as I can. I get stunned for a very long time, but I'm able to survive. I'm cleansing with the Fire Aura Transmute, and the Rev is still chasing. I get a nice Gale, but I get dazed by the Mesmer, and I'm just using the healing combo here. I get into my Weave Self, and I'm just going to try to counter pressure this Rev as much as possible. I see they've just used their heal and they're pretty low, so I am trying to counter pressure. They just used their quickness, so I go into my invuln, and I'm going to try to finish them off here. I do land a 2000 hit there with my Flame Uprising, and my Pyro Vortex lands, but I'm really out of cooldowns right now, and I don't have enough to cleave through this Mesmer's revival, so they actually get the revive on the Rev there. So I have to kind of just maintain my pressure on them. They use their heal again, so this is potentially killable again. I blink into my Gale and Pyro Vortex, but they have a stun break, and I'm really got a lot of condies on me right now, so I have to do my water combo into cleanse. I use the fire combo to get the healing, and I get the Rev down. And now this time I have Pyro Vortex ready, but I am getting way pressured by this Mirage now, and the Mirage, instead of going for the revive, tries to kill me this time, which is actually the right play because they can really get me down, and if they don't go for me, yeah, they could really miss out on that opportunity. I have Pyro Vortex, but as usual, I'm getting too heavily pressured by the Mesmer. I keep using the Fire 2 into my water field, as you can see there, which gives me a lot of sustain in this 1v2. And yeah, I get the Rev down fully, and now it's just a 1v1 with the Mirage. So if I can survive the Mirage and the Rev, then I can survive the Mirage. So at this point, this is pretty much a one fight. Here's another outnumbered situation where I'm just trying to survive, because when I am this outnumbered, there's really not much of a potential for getting a kill because they're just going to res each other or something like that. So I'm just looking for a situation where I can get one of them split off and potentially focus them while they're isolated, or just maybe survive long enough until one of them gets bored and leaves, and then I have a better chance in that less outnumbered situation. So here I am trying to stay in this little hole here, and I have to invul now. I'm going to leave, and I'm using the target on the NPCs here to port to and get some distance, because I can't really stay in melee range of 3 of them long, and I'm just going to die instantly. And even the Scrapper, which has like permanent super speed, is really pressuring me, so I can't really do anything to get away from them, so I'm forced to counter pressure them and potentially make them go into a more defensive stance. But I'm getting heavily pressured. I'm almost dead here. I blink out and actually get pulled in by one of the guards, so this is a hyper dire situation. I have to use my Weave Self Elite to stun them and get them off me, but I can use my Polaric Leap to get towards the walls again by targeting the burning oil. And now I'm outside of the SMC here, so I'm a little bit more safe, but I'm still not out of the woods yet. They are still chasing, and I get immobilized here. I have to use my stun break there to get out of that thief's immobilize, and I have to gale the chaser there. But yeah, there's just more and more coming at me. I luckily get up my obsidian flesh here just when I need it, and I pop my barrier, go into the air attunement to get the super speed, or the swiftness, which is increased swiftness, and then I'm just kiting up this hill here while the thirsty chasers keep chasing. Now at this point, my blink, or my lightning flash, is really close to being off cooldown, and I know that this is a really good kite spot to use blink on, so I'm just stalling until I can get it up, and I port on top of the wall. And not many people can really chase with ports, so I'm in a pretty safe spot now. I'm able to mount and just leave at this point. So if you like this kind of content, you should consider subscribing for more. Also, like the video, and you can become a patron, which would help me greatly. You can also support me in other ways by clicking any of the links in the description. And if you're interested in any other builds, you can find the playlist and the build list for roaming builds in the description as well. And I hope you all have a good time with these builds, and I will see you next time.